What's up? Welcome, everybody. Let me add this. There we go. Y'all ready for this? I had to use a backup microphone. I lost a cord. Welcome, everybody. It's a weird day today. A lot of weird stuff happening. And we're going to be talking about the weird things happening in coded ways, I guess, because you never know what you can and can't say. If you want to support the stream, you can do so through super chats. Super chats are done through Streamlabs, or you can do it natively through YouTube. Yeah, I'm reworking the stuff in here, so the lighting is going to be a little different here in the near future. And we were traveling. We were on our way to go to the Oasis concert, but we had a change of plans. I had to rebuild the website the other night due to the theme suddenly being out of date. I mean, it's not sudden. I knew that day was coming. Unfortunately, it came right before the concert, so I spent all night rebuilding the website. In the long run, it works out for the best because now the website's a lot smoother. It's a lot newer. It looks good. Still got some tweaking to do, but it functions better now. Purchasing and canceling your memberships is a lot easier. The layout is a lot easier. You can find everything now. It's just all kind of one click away. There's not a zillion different distracting tabs up there. I'll show you what I mean. But I had to email some African dude who rewrote the code for the last one, for the Magnus theme that I had. And he was like, "Why are you gay? This theme is no longer supported." I'm like, well, if the theme is no longer supported, it's time to call it a night. It's time to let it rest in peace. I think the new one looks pretty cool, though. It's kind of a magazine style. What do you guys think? You like the new style here? It looks pretty good. That theme was like an old, I think it was the same theme as like the Vigilant Citizen website. So the theme actually expired in terms of code and security 3 years ago. And I reached out to the African dude, and he was cool enough to update the code for me. But he's like, "This time, no more updates for you, my friend. It is time to get a new code. Otherwise, you are gay." And I said to him, "I am gay. You are right, sir. I will no longer be gay. I will now repent of the gay." Speaking of the gay, today we're going to be talking about by the way, yeah, everything should be working fine. I updated everything in terms of like the tabs at the top, right? So if you're a member, you can log in where it says member content, and everything is right there. So your account's right here, your member content is right here. It's all right there. Purchase here, cancel change here, bookshop right there, and then you've got like archives and everything and a drop down. And then I added a checkout over here to make that easier because people sometimes can't find the checkout. So remember to support the stream through heading over to chalk.com. Now, I had a couple people messaging me about the book there. Where's my book? So when I originally put the date for the release, that's what I originally thought the release was going to be, July, August. The problem is that sometimes publishers and editors, when they go through and read it once or twice. So I had an editor read it, and then we had the publisher read it. I had Jamie read it. So I had 3 people read it, and there were significant revisions that had to be done. So those revisions sometimes take a while. So I think people thought that they were going to get their book that month, and I said very clearly that I wasn't sure when exactly it would be. I went through all of those revisions. It took a week to do all the revisions, and now it is going to the printer. So I'm sorry that it wasn't as soon as we all thought. We're only basically a month behind. So that's not too bad in the world of publishing. So you're going to get Esoteric Hollywood 3. You don't have to worry about it. It's not, I'm not scamming you out of $40. It's just that sometimes books, in the world of books, that's what happens. It kind of takes a while. Oh, you got this. I didn't know you could do this. This is kind of a, I don't know why you would want to zoom in on all the, I guess you could zoom in on the faces. That's interesting. That's a new feature, I guess. But as far as I know, the publisher told me the other day that we're going to the printer now. So you should be good. No need to worry. I know that it's delayed. And I understand that, like I said, if you ordered other stuff with it, that's also going to take a while to get here. And then I forgot to, the Eventbrite event. Our conference. You can get tickets for our conference in November, Athens and Jerusalem. We've added some speakers, Dr. David Patrick Harry, Dr. Ananias Sorum. I think some other people that I'm not aware of will be speaking. All that will be updated soon. You can get your tickets there. Metropolitan Jonah as well, and that is November 22nd. And the theme of the conference is Orthodox life, philosophy, aesthetics, all of that. And yeah, we will be in, of course, Stafford, Virginia in the next coming week for the Ludwell conference. But you can also get your tickets for our conference right here. I meant to add this to the show description. I forgot. Anyway, so you can get your Esoteric Hollywood 3s. All the copies are signed. And even though it says in stock, that's just the default settings. Somebody was like, false advertising, you put in stock. It's just a default setting when the book is coming out. It's not actually in stock. So, I mean, if you want to argue with me over false advertising because my homemade website has an in-stock default setting, it's just kind of ridiculous. But so this is the kind of stuff you deal with when you're your own boss. But thank you guys for your support. Enjoy and get the book there. Now, I've been meaning to do this. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but because there's not a whole lot to say, but you know, there was a series of movies from the late 70s, early 80s, I guess 1980 up into the 90s, with the trend of the TRANZ killer. And everybody remembers, of course, Silence of the Lambs, Clarice, fava beans, all this kind of stuff. We all know about that. Although it's not, of course, Dr. Hannibal, but Buffalo Bill was his name, right? And there's a reason for this, and that's because in some of the cases of the actual serial killers, they have had this odd tendency. Now, when we read the Carl Jung book on archetypes, and archetypes, and we lectured through that, we saw that Jung had a theory that there is an imbalance in the person's anima and animus that makes them feel like the feminine side is dominant, and then it comes to take over and produces eventually, and even Carl Jung said this, a kind of possession. And so there's a couple places actually that Carl Jung talked about that. Yeah, I removed the recommended reading section because it needs to be all updated and redone. So there is no recommended reading anymore. You can just go to the videos where I talk about what books to read. I mean, beyond that, it's not even necessary to have a gigantic 200 books recommended to read anyway, because nobody's going to read 200 books. Maybe 1 out of 1,000 people will read 50 of them. So there's no point in having 200 recommended books on your website. At most, maybe 5 in a few subjects. That's it. There's no point in having a giant recommended reading section, and it was all jumbling up and looked ugly and messed up the website anyway. So, anyway, so it's not just a matter, I don't think, of having low T in the case of people who have these issues. There's something else going on. I'm not saying Carl Jung is completely wrong about possession, but that's what I want to get to, is that we might actually be overlooking the possibility of the demonic. And I came across a clip today that was interesting. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. I don't really think this guy's that funny. I'll show you what I mean. But there's a guy named Joey Tunes, and his comments, in my opinion, are not very funny, but they appeal to a lot of people. But regardless of his comments, he came across this oddball character, and I think you're going to see what I mean when we look at this guy. I mean, I can't say for sure because I don't know this person. This person could be acting and playing it up on his Twitter or, I mean, his TikTok or whatever this is. But I don't think this person's acting. This person comes off to me as having alternate entities, and one of them is not human.
How are y'all doing? We are also the Beast. We are also Jack.
See, this is why kids don't run lemonade stands in their neighborhood anymore.
I'm the one you're literally going to fall in love with. Well, you'll fall in love with the four of us.
Imagine your kids seeing this.
So this is an individual who either is pretending or actually has 4 personalities, one of whom calls himself the Beast. Now, I understand that's very similar to the M. Night Shyamalan movie Split. But looking at this individual, I detect that this is not a mentally sane individual, not a stable person. So I'm going to vote that this probably is real.
Passing by on a bicycle.
You will definitely adore your Emily.
No wonder the kids don't want to play outside anymore.
Now, notice the voices do change between the 4 entities speaking. The Beast, Emily, and whoever the dude is.
Can't wait to see you guys tonight. Bye, guys.
Can't even take a...
So when we see that a lot of times individuals who are TRA and Z or think they are or whatever, sometimes they actually seem to have a split thing going on. I read 2 books on this from individuals who work with these people. One was Dr. Colin Ross's book, Osiris Complex. We lectured through that book many years ago. And a few of the individuals who had female personalities or alters, sometimes they were dominant and they would act in this way, believing that they were an opposite gender or that they were the identity of this fractured alter. And I also read Switching Time, which is another book where a psychiatrist, psychologist, whatever he was, he dealt with similar cases of this. So what's interesting is that Hollywood has presented this, right? I'm really quiet. Okay, let me see if I can turn up my audio here. It's probably this microphone's different. Can you hear me? Let's see if I can boost my sound. Test. Okay, let's see. Can you hear me still? Is this any better? Audio input capture all the way up to 100. Okay. I can turn down also the volume on the videos. That'll probably help too. I'm not sure why this, it's just a different microphone. And so let's turn it all the way up input wise. Is that better? Can you hear me better? I'm having to use this crappy old mic because I lost a cord coming down here. All right, so when we come to films that have captured this, one of the first was, in an interesting way, is Brian De Palma's film Dressed to Kill. I had not seen this movie until pretty recently, and Jamie and I just got a kind of a Brian De Palma kick going a while back. And this was better than I expected, because I didn't know what was going on. And because Michael Caine played a good shot, T-R-A-N-G killer, I just ruined the movie for you. This was actually really well done. Now, everybody knows, I think, Brian De Palma pretty much copies and rips off Hitchcock. But in this situation, it actually works, and there's some really famous sequences of sort of this stalking sequence at the art exhibit. Michael Caine plays this psychiatrist who, if you don't know, has MPD-DID. He's split, but the other half of Michael Caine is a woman, and he doesn't actually know that. And so the two alters kind of interact and dupe each other, or they don't interact, but they dupe each other. And we think this whole time that we're chasing this sort of unknown killer. And it ends up, of course, being Michael Caine with MPD-DID. Dressed to Kill is kind of a classic. But moving on in the 1990s, there's a lesser known film that starred Bruce Willis and Jane March. And this is called Color of Night. And this one is another one of these twists where we have Bruce Willis sort of being entrapped and falling in love with this young woman who attends his meetings because he's a psychiatrist. And everybody in there has these really weird fixations and mental problems. But he falls for her, and this entire time it's a very similar situation where he doesn't know what's going on, but she's actually fractured. She's undergone severe trauma, and the killer ends up being her male persona. So we have a reverse situation where it's a female to male killer here with Bruce Willis. And it's kind of a sleazy B-movie, Silk Stockings, USA Up All Night type movie, but I wasn't expecting it to be that sort of a theme, right? Where we have trauma-based mind control essentially creating sort of a TRANZ serial killer. Everybody remembers, of course, Silence of the Lambs. It's interesting, you couldn't make this movie now because of the insanity of the dystopia that has now rolled out. Who would have ever dreamed, if we tried to tell people in the 80s and 90s that, oh yeah, in the future dystopia, there's going to be, TRANZ assassins running around. And I don't mean to make light of it. It's just insane, right? But that's where we are. But everyone is all over, social media since the Nashville event of the TRANZ person and this event more recently. Nobody's looking at the fact that, we did interviews with BX, and BX has tracked and traced these Order of Nine Angles, 764, these online satanic networks that a lot of these people are connected to consistently, and how they're sort of entrapped and they are goaded into this. And, of course, obviously those groups have a lot of very suspicious backgrounds and connections, especially David Myatt of the former, he seems to have some obvious British intelligence connections in the background. And I don't know, again, I'm not saying that the movies necessarily predict the future. I don't think that Brian De Palma knew that in 2025 we would have these types of assassins, but it makes sense because, again, the art world is tapping into, in my view, the spiritual world. And artists are inspired. When we talk about artists being inspired, a lot of times that inspiration comes from the spiritual realm. That's been my theory, my thesis forever. And so they might not be cognizant of, quote, predicting the future, but there is a kind of a prophetic spirit going on. And we can see that very clearly, for example, in Dostoevsky. We've detailed in many podcasts, especially with Mark Hackard and Tristan, cases where Dostoevsky was very prescient in his fiction and predicting massed chaos through socialism, right? We think about The Possessed or Demons, where you have the characters predicting 60 million skulls to bring in world socialism. You have the Grand Inquisitor chapter in Brothers Karamazov, where Dostoevsky's characters are predicting the socialism world salvation turn that the Vatican will take to becoming essentially against Christ, antichrist, but offering people a world socialist, anti-war, pacifist, de-armament future. And that's exactly what we read a couple nights ago in the Gaudium et Spes Vatican II documents, where they actually, And I didn't even realize paragraph 66 actually encourages chain migration. So it's even worse than I even knew, because I was looking at some of the highlight sections, but there's other sections that I didn't even get to or wasn't even aware of. So Vatican II's Gaudium et Spes is a powerful fulfillment, Pacamenteros of John the 23rd as well, of what Dostoevsky's Grand Inquisitor chapters predicted, 80, 70, 80, 90 years earlier, or The Possessed, right? That world socialism would lead to these sorts of scenarios. And far from something like Fatima, vindicating the Vatican or something like that, rather, Dostoevsky's more powerful and more predictive than these goofy Fatima predictions, because the Vatican itself is the one that adopted world socialist, Fabian socialist principles in the Gaudium et Spes documents on record. Now, we're going to look and see further evidence of why that's the case and how the Vatican has turned to being a tool of this, as I elucidated in my closing statement of the debate, when we look at Paulo Freire and Freire, and the other liberation theology socialists like Camorra, Archbishop Camorra, who were mentors and influences on both Klaus and Pope Francis. That will help us understand how this is coming to fruition even post-Vatican II, even still. But we'll get to that here in a moment. We're also going to look at some of the unknown and forgotten MKUltra documents that people aren't even aware of, like studies on sorcery and witchcraft. Oh, you didn't know that? Well, yeah, we've talked about that for many, many years. And I'm going to show you the actual documents, the actual sub-project. And shout out to Jamie for reminding me of that today. But before we get to that, I want to talk about some more of the films in this bizarre genre. One of the favorites that's overlooked also by Brian De Palma is John Lithgow in Raising Cain. And if you never watched this one, actually, I highly recommend actually watching this one, because it's a similar scenario, but the plot here, I mean, it's actually filmed really well. There's these awesome dream sequences, and De Palma's really good at that. What I didn't remember, because I watched this movie in the 90s when it came out, and I didn't really realize what it was about. But if you go watch it now, it's like, again, wow, this is prophetic, because kind of like Dressed to Kill, we have John Lithgow as an MPD DID person. But the craziest part of this movie is that it's explicitly revealed in the screenplay that his dad is a former mad scientist involved with intelligence agencies who's taking children and programming them with MPD, DID through trauma-based mind control. So it's actually explicitly MKUltra in the film. And the father has created these personas through traumatizing the John Lithgow character. And John Lithgow ends up being, in some of the sequences, not just an MPD, DID serial killer, but one of them is a woman. Isn't that interesting? So I can't say for sure. I mean, it's possible that Brian De Palma was read in on MKUltra or something like that. If you watch his movie about the guy who kind of goes crazy through voyeurism, that one is very similar in terms of dissociation, and he gets lost in the prawn world and ends up kind of being involved in, I'm not going to spoil it for you because it's a pretty good movie too. I just went blank on the name of that. What's the name of that one? Do you remember, Jamie, the other Brian De Palma film where the guy kind of gets lost in prawn? Let me pull it up. Let me pull up his movies here. I'll find it right here. Body Double. Okay, so the one I'm thinking of is called Body Double, and I think it's Melanie Griffith's first film appearance. Yeah, she plays this sort of mysterious actress woman that ends up in a prawn film, and this movie is very Lynchian, right? You can tell David Lynch was very influenced by this. And Dress to Kill is very Lynchian as well, but more so Body Double is very Mulholland Drive-ish. But in both cases, you have the lead character essentially dissociating and falling into things way above his pay grade, we should say, I guess. All right. Then beyond those interesting films was Cherry Falls. Never heard of this movie. No idea where this movie came from. It's almost like they're making new old movies because I've never heard of this. Somehow it bypassed my sensibilities for these types of weird movies. And I'm not going to say it's a good movie, but thematically it's interesting because it's yet another film where we have a TRANZ killer, and there's also the added oddity of course, Brittany Murphy, the beautiful Hollywood starlet who met an untimely early demise, most likely because of a Hollywood offing, shall we say. And again, it's very odd when we find Hollywood starlets or stars who end up dead in suspicious odd ways, and then we look back at their films and the types of films that they were in. A lot of times there's these odd parallels. We all know about Heath Ledger, right, being in quite a few occult themed roles, and then we have Heath Ledger's untimely demise. We can see weird parallels with River Phoenix, his life and his film career and choices, and then his early demise. So a lot of cases of this. But the weird part about this film is again, not that it's a very good film, just that you couldn't make this movie now because of the fact that it's not PC given where we are, and it still portrays people with these issues as fundamentally unstable, psychotic, and a danger to society, right? How far have we fallen that we can't even watch 90s movies? It says 2000, I think it's actually a 1999 movie, but 90s movies are now, it's just, I don't know what to say. Now, so what's the answer? What's really going on? Well, everybody seems to be overlooking the obvious, because so many of the serial killers themselves, as we've covered in our serial killer podcasts, discuss the demonic aspects and their belief that they have demonic problems. And this is everybody from BTK killer to Toy Box killer in his little satanic cult that he had created, to Bobby Bardella with his satanic cult, to the even the case of what's his name? Dahmer wanted to create a satanic altar, believed he was possessed. It's just so common in the serial killers, and yet when we actually go to the news, that's actually suppressed. They actually try to get that out of the story. They cover up for this kind of stuff. And that, to me, suggests, again, not just that the media lies, but that the media is actually in many ways complicit in covering up a lot of this satanic stuff. Picton Pig Farm, satanic elements in that one. Almost all of these, the major ones, have, demonic and satanic elements to it. And that's almost always covered up. It's pretty crazy. Son of Sam, obviously another one. So, wouldn't you know it, the Bible has quite a bit of information on this. And one of the persisting Reddit level errors I want to debunk is the idea that demons and Satan are New Testament inventions. First of all, Satan's present in the garden as a demonic entity. When it says that he's compared to or likened to a serpent, that's because he's an angelic being. It's not saying he's literally a snake. And so normies and Reddit tier people try to make fun of us because, oh, you believe in a talking snake. It's an angel. Okay. And he's a specific type of angel. It's not a literal snake, but it is a literal angel. And he's called the adversary, the opponent of man from the early stages, meaning that he is a demonic entity because the angels fell before man fell. In Leviticus 17:7, we read that the nations surrounding Israel sacrifice to demons. And so Israel cannot act like, and is forbidden to act like, the nations around them, because the nations around them worship the demons. In fact, Deuteronomy 32:17, the Song of Moses says, they, the demons, or the pagan nations, sacrifice to demons and not to God. They sacrifice to new gods that their fathers did not fear. And in fact, the Song of Moses is actually being more specific in castigating the Israelites for worshiping the demons of the nations around them. So they fell into exactly what they were supposed to not fall into. So Deuteronomy 13 is pointing out that what Leviticus 17 is talking about is the very thing that Israel fell into. In 2 Chronicles 11:15, in the books of the Kings, we have the notion that when Israel becomes apostate, the king appoints for himself priests of the high places for the demons and the calf idols which he made. And this is, I think, Jeroboam. I'm going from memory. I think it's talking about Jeroboam here. But Jeroboam, who creates the schismatic alternate temple at Dan and Bethel, which eventually becomes connected to the Samaritans and Samaritan worship. The schismatic Samaritan worship actually had its origins in the demonic, and it's identified as calf idols, which is recalling the worship of the golden calf when the Israelites came out of Egypt. So they keep falling back into worshiping the gods of the nations, right? And that's why the calf idols, going back to the Exodus, are identified as demons. Now look how, again, maybe you don't believe this, but quite obviously there's several examples in the Old Testament that there's demons and that the nations worship demons. So that means it's not a New Testament invention. And yet so many people are under the delusion, the error, that there's no demons or Satan in the Old Testament or in the Torah. That's something that Christians made up. Totally not true. Just ridiculous. It would take you 2 seconds to look up these texts. The gods of the nations, they worship devils, right? That's some translations of Psalm, 51 or 50, 51, somewhere in there. And then Psalm 106, they sacrifice their sons and daughters to demons. Jeremiah talks about the Valley of Hinnom and the Israelites falling into human sacrifice. And we did a whole talk on the book of Jeremiah years ago and about this principle. The book of Isaiah, I know in the Masoretic text it talks about Lilith, and I think it's Isaiah 24, somewhere around there. Lilith is described as a demon in the text. Now, that might not be in the Septuagint. I'm not actually sure off the top of my head whether Lilith is in the Septuagint text of Isaiah, but it's in the Masoretic version. So again, notice that this is just the word demons, right? Gives you multiple entries in the Old Testament. And then, of course, Jesus' ministry, many times over, he encounters people that are possessed with demonic entities. And usually they manifest those signs at the presence of something holy, the cross, etc., the presence of Christ himself. That uncreated divine energy presence triggers these demonic entities. And we see that pretty consistently throughout the gospel. So I'm not going to go through all of the gospel texts about, demonic possessions. I'm sure everybody's familiar with that. And of course, the book of Revelation and the other New Testament texts also, many times over mention demons, demonic entities. Let's see what the book of Revelation talks about. Mankind worshiping demons. Spirits of demons go out into all the earth performing false signs and false miracles. The city becomes a dwelling place of demons in Revelation 18, Babylon the harlot. So why are we not looking at and considering the spiritual interpretation of a lot of these events in understanding it's not just, quote, mental illness. There's spiritual illness going on. Six of Spades, $20. I'm late as usual. Or no, you're late as usual, you diva. Exactly. But he knows I'm a diva. Good job on that debate with Tim Gordon. It was really good. Cheers, everyone. Thank you. Matt Scroggins, $5. Yeah, I mean, I think the debate was exhausting. And, trying to drive from Miami up to Chicago, it's just too much to try to get up there for the concert also. I was just too tired to do all that, especially after rebuilding the website. So I will make up for missing Oasis by going to a Nero concert or going to see Oasis in the future. I think they're going to tour again, probably because it was so successful. Anyway. Matt Scroggins, $5. Thank you for doing a cool stream while I'm miserable in this rig driving through Atlanta traffic. Well, thank you so much, Matt Scroggins. In fact, we were just driving through that miserable Atlanta traffic 2 days ago. So I totally feel you on that. I know exactly what it's like. It's the worst. And you always got to be sure if you're coming up from Florida or coming up the 65 or whatever it is into Atlanta, 75, you got to be sure to not take a piss break in South Atlanta, because it's just the word. You're going to get attacked by orange-haired brothers. I'm serious. Like, so my buddy sent me a picture of like crazy orange-haired brothers in South Atlanta just running wild at the gas station. You got to avoid that. Stephen Cook, $5. Jay, glory to Christ. Did you see the teaser for this new Nick Cage horror movie called Carpenter's Son? It is about Christ's childhood. Yikes, that sounds terrible. But what I am happy about is that Nick Cage is being considered for, you got it, season 5 of True Detective. That's what I'm talking about. That's what we need to bring back True Detective, one of the best shows of all time, especially season 1. Nicolas Cage has been on a horror hot streak with Mandy, Renfield, Longlegs, and now he's in talks to be the star of season 5 of True Detective. That sounds awesome. By the way, Esoteric Hollywood 3, of course, features my classic True Detective analysis. What are you saying is glitchy? We're supposed to have all the streaming issues fixed. Please don't tell me the streaming was glitchy. Of course, it might be because, let me see. It might be because I'm on live stream and we could try. Let me try this. Let's see if this works. If not, just hit refresh. Can y'all still see me? Are we streaming good? Because I think I was streaming via Wi-Fi here at my other house, and so I've not yet tested the new Mac and all the new equipment here. No glitches. Okay, good. We should be running smooth here. Let me test the speeds real quick here. Oh yeah. So I bought me. Yeah, we should be 0 glitches because we're talking like super fast now. All right. Thank you guys for the super chats. You guys are being cool dudes as usual. David Murdoch Art, $20. Have you seen Monster Summer with Mel Gibson? Actually, I did. We watched the first 3/4 of it, and it was like 2 in the morning. I fell asleep, so I don't know how it ends. He says it's worth a watch. It's got really dark themes, clear messages. If you've not seen it, I need to see the end of it because I didn't finish the movie. If you guys are, let me see if there's super chats coming in on Streamlabs. It's not showing up for some reason, so let me go to the dashboard in case I'm missing a Streamlabs super chat. Yes. Storm the Cat, $10. Do you think some of the world leaders are actually possessed? Why do you look different when you're on other people's shows? It has to do with the cameras that they're using and the lighting. So Elijah, for whatever reason, has terrible lighting in his studios, and there's light coming from every direction, which is not really what you want to do. Also, for the Tim Gordon debate, I stayed up the 2 previous nights writing the debate introduction. So I was up for 2 nights straight, so my eyes are really puffy. Also, the allergies in Miami are very terrible, so my eyes were extra puffy. And usually when we stay in a hotel, it's a nightmare for my allergies, especially in Miami. So that's part of it when we're traveling. And also, people have different cameras, and different cameras have different lenses, which can either stretch your face out or make you look skinnier. So it really has to do with the camera and the lens that they're using, and the lighting. And so that's why. But I promise I look like a normal person. I don't look like a crazy, methed out weirdo or something like that. Like, I wasn't up partying the night before. I was up writing my introductory debate statements for all 3 sections. Cobra Crease, $10. Remind us of the upcoming event in Florida. Yes, if you didn't see, it's in the show description. We did actually mention it earlier. Actually, I forgot to put it in the show description. So, Athens and Jerusalem. November 22nd. And here is the link in the chat for you guys. There's the link. Let me add it to the show description here as well. Okay. This is a 2-day event, so keep that in mind. Of course, you don't have to come to both days. You can come to whatever you want to, but this is our first 2-day event. It is our second Orthodox conference at the Florida Church, St. Nicholas in Palm Coast. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We've already sold quite a few tickets. I don't think we're going to sell out anytime soon, so you don't have to immediately get your ticket. But there is a chance we could sell out because the Ludwell conference did sell out pretty quick, and some people were a little upset that they didn't, get their tickets. But yeah, I don't have anything to do with that conference in the sense of like scheduling and organizing it. That's all out of my hands. But this is the first time I've been invited to speak at their event. So, but I will have all my books except for Esoteric Hollywood 3. I don't think 3 will be out by the time of the Ludwell conference. But don't worry, you're going to get your Esoteric Hollywood 3 copies. It's going to come. Hades Undead, $50. I missed the gaming discussion the other day. Off topic, have you played Super Mario Galaxy? It is my favorite game of all time. I have. We beat Mario Galaxy. We beat all the Marios. I think Jamie and I both have. And there might be one Mario that we haven't played or beat. I forget which one it is. Yeah. But Mario Galaxy, all the Marios are fun. Absolutely, hands down. All your hard work is paying off, Cobra Crease says for $10. Thank you so much. Yeah. Fredo, $5. This is from a few days ago. There's a native PC port for Mario 64. I can DM you. I think he did DM me. I might think about doing Mario Kart live streams. It just seems like it's going to take a lot of time to hook it up. Bobby D, $10. FIFA, first in, first. Are you talking about like crypto on taxes? Or are you talking about FIFA? Is that like soccer? I don't know anything about soccer, dude. But thank you for your super chats. Appreciate that. I don't know what FIFA. When you do your taxes and you're counting in crypto stuff, I think first in, first out. That's. I don't remember what I do on taxes. That's why I have an accountant. But it's a nightmare regardless. You guys looking forward to Nick Cage in True Detective? Wouldn't that be great? Did you remember that the season 1 of True Detective was Crowleyan human, Trafficking? So yeah, anyway, back to this. We're overlooking, I think, the demonic aspect of what's going on. What do you guys think? Let me know in your super chat comments what you think about, are we overlooking and forgetting the demonic aspect of TRANZ? A Panini, £5. You and Charles should chat again. Yeah, Charles, Carol, it's been a while. He's moved much closer to you in the faith since your last podcast. That's a good idea. In fact, I put him in contact with Sam Tripoli. And so, Sam Tripoli had Charles Carroll on. So that would actually be a good thing to do. Is to do a part 2 of that. William Money, $5. What do you think about this idea of perfect possession? It's possible. I've read most of what's his name's books. He talks about this. I think it's more of a Roman Catholic idea. It's pretty profuse in, who's that corny Jesuit dude that ended up being kind of a fraud? The fake trad. I'm going blank on his name. Malachi Martin. I don't know why I couldn't think of that. I've read most of his books. We've lectured through his stuff. The Possession book. The problem is that Malachi Martin really undercuts his own credibility for so many different reasons. I mean, he basically became a textual liberal. In some of his early books, he actually was putting lowercase g for God. In some of his, when he was newly a Jesuit, he put out some academic texts, and he seems to not even believe any of it. He cites as a source M. Scott Peck and promotes M. Scott Peck, who was a weird Methodist New Ager guy who believed that he could take the demons into himself. It's just totally why would you promote that guy? It's totally fraudulent. And then if you read Keys of This Blood, Malachi Martin comes off as a total fraud because nothing he says actually makes any sense. He's like, John Paul II is influenced by demons. He's satanic, but he's also a true, humble hero who's going to save the Roman Catholic Church. It just absolutely makes no sense. He was supported by certain Middle Eastern country people, promoted by them. I think Hoffman has shown the receipts on that years ago. So the problem is that there's really nothing credible about Malachi Martin, except that, yeah, he is kind of admitting some things. But the other thing that's suspicious about Malachi Martin is that he seems to have predicted the Sedevacantist trad movements and the motu proprio for the Latin Mass under Benedict, which to me says all of that was kind of staged and planned. Vatican CIA bureaucratic management. So he doesn't come off to me as an authentic person at all. I see him as a fraud, a con man, but as someone who is, through his disinformation, basically putting out a lot of true things if you can read through the disinfo. As we've covered his books for decades now. I mean, I did a talk on this thing almost a decade ago. The entire 800-page Keys of This Blood book, which is his geopolitical text. Another example, he basically makes Moscow the center of all the world's problems, which is just total CIA Cold War narrative. No critiques of the CIA, no critiques of Western intelligence, no real critiques of the Vatican. He promotes the fake trad within the church, neo-trad movement. It's all bullshit. So with all of that, no, I'm not going to believe his tales and stories of his supposed exorcisms. And if you read Hostage to the Devil, he says These are real exorcism stories, but I'm going to cloak everything to hide the names of the people and who's the real exorcist. Well, we don't know. Is it him? I mean, he's just not trustworthy. He's his own worst enemy, and he comes off as a total disinfo operative. So, and I mean, he's really the father of the fake trad cat movement, especially that last appendix of Keys of This Blood, which kind of shows that sedevacantism is a fake. It's a fake thing. It's not real. Because he predicts the Seta movement and its growth at the end of it. And that book was written in the mid-90s, I think. Troithodox, $5. When you're laid back sipping on gin and juice and your mind on Bitcoin and Bitcoin on your mind. Well, the thing about Bitcoin is that I can be laid back and I don't have to worry about it. I'm talking about Malachi Martin. So let's talk a little bit about this, because as we know, why is this a big deal? Well, actually, before we get to that, we should talk about more of the MKUltra stuff, because, we just saw with this recent TRNZ person, he talks about a demon entity in the mirror that he sees in the mirror, right? And supposedly when he sees this entity in the mirror, it's telling him he's got to do this stuff. He doesn't want to do it. Skull and crossbones. And then to do these events. I don't want to. Help. Right? Now, again, to me, this just screams real spiritual problems. Right? Beyond the real spiritual problems is also the issue of the Vatican is hosting. Oh man, did I not save it? I meant to say it. You got to see this. Hold on, let me pull this up for you. It just gets crazier and crazier. Let's see. I sent this to Tristan. No, here it is. Here it is. Check this out. Vatican will host a LGBTQ plus event welcoming all of the LGBTQ plus Catholics at a prayer vigil called Church, a Home for All, starting from the borders. In other words, open borders must also include openness to the Skittles borders. And it's actually putting up a Skittles crucifix, cross. Wow. And tradcats are out here attacking me, coming after me as the source of all these problems in the alternative media, conservative right-wing sphere. How much more blind and hypocritical could you be? I mean, if you can't see this, look at this and see who the real issue is, who the real problem is. The Vatican itself. All right, let's take a look at this event, see what's going on. Let's go to the actual website of a rainbow impressionist painting of the Vatican here with people in gay colors in a Catholic church ship. I guess it's supposed to be a ship. I don't know what that is. People are like folded paper inside of a teepee, or is it a ship? I don't know what it's supposed to be, but it's in Italian, so we don't know exactly what this says. But the translation over here says it's a Christian tent of Jonathan. The tent of Jonathan? Founded by James Martin. I wonder if they call it that because David and Jonathan were best friends, and they're actually blasphemously reading that as David and Jonathan were gay. I bet you that's what it is. So James Martin is putting on at the Vatican the Skittles themed event Anyone can join this pilgrimage, even if you're Skittles, according to the Vatican. The program includes a prayer with Pope Leo XIV. Oh, but it's not the Vatican that's the problem. It's Orthodox, it's Ortho bros that are the problem. Now, this is going on, and then this is going on in society. How are you going to solve and heal the world and its problems and offer actual healing when the entity that runs your church, the Vatican, is promoting the very things that lead to this? Because the LGBTQ plus includes TRANZ, thus the Vatican is pro TRANZ. And most people can figure out the glaring demonic hypocrisy here. How can this be a sin against nature, a crime against nature? And now it's a Vatican promoted lifestyle. That's a contradiction in morals, clear as day. You don't need a THD. You don't need to know all the nuances of the filioque and hypostasis and energetic procession when everybody can see that this is a total moral failure. Now remember, the Vatican isn't just infallible and indefectible in dogmatic ideas. It's faith and morals, meaning that it cannot teach or accept moral error or theological error or heresy, right? So nobody's saying that the bishops or the Pope are impeccable. Nobody's arguing that, right? We're not saying that they can't make errors in terms of their own private opinions, or that they can't morally be atrocious, right? Every Roman Catholic will say, yes, we've had morally atrocious popes that had, houses of ill repute, all of this stuff. Yeah, but we're actually pointing out that, no, the Vatican actually is theologically and morally a failure because it contradicts the teaching on morals. That's the point. And how is this not evident with this, what I just showed you? Did I not share this? I thought for sure I shared this. Anyway. So, LGBTQ plus events celebrated and put on by the Vatican. Acceptance run by James Martin. Hello, they're not going to offer, they don't have the goods. They can't heal you. Or else they wouldn't be supporting and pushing those events. It's not rocket science to figure this out, guys. William Money, $5. Russia spreading her errors in Fatima. It fails to account for the fact that communism is ultimately an Enlightenment ideology. Well, it's an Enlightenment and a rabbinic ideology. And there's a rabbinic influence on the Enlightenment as well. So communism, Marxism, socialism, Trotskyism, they all have their roots, yes, in rabbinic philosophy, but also in Plato. Plato was, as far as I'm aware, the first proto-communist. And all the communist states and dictatorships pull from that. Now, when I say rabbinic, I can read Moses Hess talking about world socialism coming to fruition and having victory through the lodges of the world, the Masonic lodges. He says that in the book. And through the establishment of the world, of the nation state of Israel as a world socialist beacon. So what the rabbinical philosophers did, especially the ones like Moses Hess, who didn't really believe in the theology anymore, they just transferred the theological salvation idea to the nation state of Israel as a atheistic salvation vehicle for the world through world socialism. Now, I'm not saying every rabbi believes that or every Jewish theologian believes that. I'm talking about those specifically. Chaim Weizmann, Theodor Herzl, Moses Hess, they believe that. And it's in their books, so what are you talking about? So the Vatican, as we saw then, has not abandoned or spoken out against this, although they did up until Vatican II, with John the 23rd's landmark encyclical. Remember, I mentioned this to you guys. And this is why Gaudium et Spes teaches what it does, is that it had prior precedent in John the 23rd's International Socialism encyclical. How do we establish universal world peace? Through justice, charity, and liberty. And what the document calls for in 1963 is internationalist economic institutions like World Economic Forum, like the United Nations, like UNESCO, like IMF, like World Bank. It doesn't explicitly list those, but that's the types of things that it's calling for. Exactly the type of Keynesian, Fabian socialist entities and world policing bodies that were set up in the post-World War II Bretton Woods era. So Vatican II's Gaudium et Spes is pulling from and basing its teaching in the papal teaching of Pacem in Terris of John the 23rd in 1963. And it was so bad that even the CIA was concerned that John the 23rd would be the Pinko Pope. They called him the Pink Pope in the CIA. And so they had to step in and try to smooth this out with Paul VI. But Vatican II's documents, especially Gaudium et Spes, as we just saw, were still essentially Fabian socialist ideas. And this is all on record. I just don't understand why people can't figure this out when it's all right here. It's public. Like, is it just... I'm trying to figure out why people can't see this or what the problem is. Sunken costs? Is that what it is? Evan, $10. Your thoughts? I was sent a video of a Roman Catholic exorcist, and he was giving an interview, and he said the devil can't stand Latin because it's the language of the church. Where did he get that from? I mean, just trad cat mythology. So devils can't stand Latin because it's the language of the church, but it wasn't the language of the church in the early days of the church when there were tons of exorcisms, when the language of the church was Greek. So it's just stupid Roman Catholic superstition. Now, did you know that MKUltra Project 121 is the specific project where the CIA studied witchcraft and shamanism and sorcery to try to master and understand it? We don't exactly know what was going on. This is at the beginning detailing the money. So it wasn't a whole lot of money, but basically they put this one professor in charge of trying to master and understand the methods of the indigenous people for the treatment of their mental disturbances and their mental health. And that could be going both ways, right? That could be how a shaman gets possessed or how a shaman thinks he dispossesses a person who is possessed. It's Subproject 121 of MKUltra, which is, as you've heard me say for many, many years, dozens and dozens of projects. And that's only from the 7 boxes that I think we do know were retrieved. And I think Helms destroyed the other 7 boxes of MKUltra before the 7 were saved. So there's 14 boxes, 7 destroyed, 7 that we know of, maybe 8. I'll show you the list here in a second. And we'll look at some of the highlights of these projects. But we're talking about this because, again, we see that demonic possession is not just in the purview of, or the occult of, superstitious Christians and Orthodox or Roman Catholic people. The CIA was actively studying sorcery, possession, mushrooms, Amanita Muscara, etc. All of this throughout dozens of MK Ultra projects. Hey, Jamie, could you make me some coffee? And we're going to look at that in a minute. And we're also going to touch on some more of the socialism again with... Actually, before we go to the MK Ultra stuff, I should finish the socialism thing. So, this is Paulo Freire, who is the Brazilian Marxist socialist. And this is a great article where it talks about how when Klaus wrote his Fourth Industrial Revolution, he was really just repackaging Marxism, socialism, liberation theology from people like Paulo Freire. And again, we need to understand that Fabian socialism is classical Marxism reformed. Classical Marxism failed in certain key areas. It was never able to get the proletariat to rise up. It was never able to establish and create a world revolution with those workers. So that was a key thing that Marxists and socialists after this period of early Marxism figured out. And so you had certain Marxist socialists who were very pro-Bolshevik, very pro-Marx. They weren't anti-Marx. They were just saying that this strategy isn't working. We got to figure out a better way to do this. So they decided to align themselves with monopoly capital, big industrialists, Henry Ford, people like that, who was influenced by and did get into Fabian socialism. In fact, they were so influential and had such a wide range that they even attracted Chesterton. Did you know Chesterton was involved in the Fabian Socialists? Now, I don't think that Chesterton was fully on board with all of the plans, because Chesterton seems to have been consistently a critic of eugenics. And most of the Fabian Socialists were pro-eugenics, right? The Beatrice and Sidney Webb, people like that, they were into dysgenics. They were into depopulation policies. And so when you read some of those Catholic writers like Hilaire Belloc and Chesterton, even though they were interested in and were, I think in the case of Chesterton, in the Fabian Social Society, they thought that this was some sort of, solution to, big capital and big corporations or whatever. But that's only part of the picture, because the thesis that I keep trying to explain and push and help people understand is that socialism is not a real opposition to capitalism. It's a dialectical control opposition that very wealthy people are smart enough and cunning enough to figure out is a key element of control. David Rockefeller, for example, figured this out. He studied under Austrian economics people like von Hayek. He writes theses under von Hayek. But then he also goes to study under the premier Fabian socialist, Harold Lasky, and he masters and understands both Austrian economic theory and Fabian socialist Keynesian economic theory. So David Rockefeller understands it from the vantage point of how it's control mechanisms and not ideas and theory that run things. And so he can say in his 1979 New York Times editorials that socialism and Maoism is great to control China. It doesn't make him a classical Marxist. It makes him a Keynesian Fabian socialist that wants to utilize whatever out of these systems. And that's why John Coleman's book is so great, because the blurb on the back says the enemy is not in Washington. Excuse me. The enemy is not Moscow. The enemy is actually in Washington, because he correctly understands, just like the Johann Ratu book, that the world adopted after World War II, not capitalism, not Marxism, but Fabian socialism. That is, socialism combined with corporatism. It's not fascism, although you might think it is. It's a type of socialism that is combined with culture critique or cultural degradation that fascism doesn't have and didn't have. Classical Marxism didn't really care about that. It was focused on the workers. But with Fabian socialism, you have the idea of let's unite with super wealthy people and let them fund it. And we will take over through the institutions, what they call penetration and permeation, and will destroy and degrade the culture in a way that the people become subservient to the corporate banker superstate. Thank you. And it's not fundamentally different than what Moses Hess and people like that talk about. It's not fundamentally that different from Bolshevism, except things like Bolshevism were their strategy. Although the Fabian Socialists loved and supported and wrote letters to Krupskaya and Lenin and all that, they were all for that. They thought that this heavy-handed approach is not going to work. It needs to be the slow, gradual, slow kill approach. And they were correct, because that is what has worked. That is why the whole world has adopted this liberalism that we're in. It's not primarily like if you listen to a Marxist or a socialist, it's capital. It's, Wall Street, right? It's not capital or Wall Street or Moscow. It is what we're talking about. It is these globalist institutions that have been set up, and that's not different from or antithetical to what Moses Hess talks about. It's the same. That's what I'm trying to tell you. World revolution, world socialism, and world capitalism are all part of the same strategy. They're identical. So it's not Marxist socialists versus the free market libertarians. Marx taught free market. He says at the end of history, the state goes away and we're all libertarian. Marx is a libertarian. It's the end of the Christian state. It's the end of the monarchy and the end of the church. That's the real battle. And all of these people that are so important and key thinkers and figures, they can either be monopoly capitalists like David Rockefeller, or Fabian socialists or socialist liberation theologians like Paulo Freire. And what do we find? Oh, they actually all conglomerate at entities like the World Economic Forum, set up by the CIA, influenced by and run by people who are Marxist socialist capitalists like Klaus Schwab. So everybody is all tricked by the labels and the titles, but they're all part of the same thing. Don't worry about the labels. Are you a Marxist socialist, or are you a World Economic Forum capitalist? They're working for the same entity. It's the same. And that's what is so hard for people to understand. They cannot figure this out, especially the boomers. People in our audience, people millennial and younger, they can pretty much figure this out. But anybody over like our era, age-wise, they just can't for whatever reason. I think they're raised in the Cold War. They can't figure this out. Now there's some exceptions, right? Dean Arnold, Jim Jatras, they understand all this stuff. Ortho Anglo-Croat. Maybe you do not like to fly, but would you consider conferences in PNW? I don't know what PNW is. Pacific Northwest? There's Rocor parishes all over Washington, Oregon. I'm just saying. I might drive up there. I don't know. We'll see. But doing and setting up conferences is a huge amount of work. So if people put on conferences and invited me, I might be willing to come speak, but I'm not going to set up a conference 2,000 miles away in Oregon or something. I'm not doing that. Evan, $10, but I appreciate your super chat and your support. But anytime people set up conferences, they can ask me potentially to come speak. Yeah. But also another thing that happens too, which is kind of annoying, is like a lot of people that put on conferences, they always ask me to come speak and they want me to do it for free, which I'm sorry, but like especially if I'm traveling, if I'm driving, I'm not going to drive 1,000 miles to something to speak for free. But I don't want to be a douchebag and be like, I deserve money. But I feel like I do deserve some money for traveling hundreds or thousands of miles. But people always they always ask me to come speak for free. And it's just like, I'm pretty sure that all the other speakers out there, Father Josiah Trenum, he doesn't speak for free. He charges quite a bit, actually. So, no, I'm not going to come speak for free. Evan, $10. Your thoughts? I was sent a video of a Roman Catholic exorcist giving an interview. No, we already read that. Excuse me. By the way, yeah, if you're enjoying the stream, hit like and share. Hush Tones, $5. I'm getting baptized into RoCore next month. Thank you for your work and introducing me to this. God did all the rest. Cheers. Hey, that's great. Many years to you, Hush Tones. It's great to hear. Tuxedo Mask, $2. Name 5 books. On what? Just name 5 books? Okay, 5 books of Narnia. How's that? Tuxedo, you need to be more specific. You mean 5 books on what topic? I need more. Oh man, I always bump this camera. It's annoying. I need more information, dog. There we go. So this individual, and I did order his book because we actually had some good, well-read people in the audience say, you got to get Paulo Freire's, what is it, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And so I did order that book. We haven't read it yet, but we are going to get to that. It's a very popular, influential 1968 book, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And this is interesting and relevant because this gets into critical theory type stuff and kind of preparing the way for Eric Fromm, Herbert Marcuse, and these individuals from Frankfurt School who push the idea that we got to move beyond the monetary oppression and into all the other areas of oppression. And thus, any minority group is by default, because they're minority, oppressed. So these are the figures that really transition us out of the classical Marxist idea of everything being class struggle and into social sphere oppression dynamics, which is what just absolutely dominates everything. Think about the recent TRANZ event. What is he's lashing out because he is an oppressed minority, right? But in reality, it's demonic, right? Because this entity is telling him he needs to go get rid of youth, right? Well, this is the ideology, the pedagogy of oppression, that if you are a minority, or if you just choose to identify as something that makes you the unique snowflake, you are now actually justified. This is the other thing that comes along with this demonic ideology, is like, now criminal actions and criminal activities are justified because you are oppressed. You see that dark logic? And this is why the left and leftism so often attracts criminal mindsets and criminal ideology and people with criminal sociopathy and psychopathy, is because criminals are cunning and they're good at lying, and they will choose beliefs or defend themselves with self-justifications based around the perceived ways that they were jilted or slighted by society, right? A lot of the serial killers, right? When you listen to the interviews, the podcasts, whatever the talk that cover these things, they never did anything wrong, right? They were wronged, and maybe they were wronged as a youth or as a child, right? In many cases they were, but this then becomes the justification for it. So I can pretty much, I'm not wrong for anything that I do. Everything that I did was justified. This is all a new ethic and a new system based around various forms of socialism, egalitarianism, and equalitarianism. And thus, anything that smacks of hierarchy or authority or better than people being better than other people, it can only come through some sort of criminal theft. In other words, if you are more successful than me, it has to be because society has oppressed me, and I have a right then to steal from you. You see, that's the whole of this ideology, right? So what's ironic is that Marxism, socialism, egalitarianism is all based on theft and envy, when supposedly it's supposed to be getting rid of theft and envy. It's all nonsense, total nonsense. But the figure here, Camara, Archbishop Camara, Heldar Camara, is a liberation theologian who would become very influential in South Latin American Jesuit spheres, Roman Catholic spheres, right? And his idea of evangelism is, against like social gospel type stuff, where it's not about repentance and being healed by the cross and resurrection. No. It's take that message of Jesus and interpret it as a world socialist ending to world hunger and world problems, you see. So Christianity is reinterpreted as socialism. Of course, there's nothing about socialism in Jesus' message at all. Nothing to do with Plato's socialism, nothing to do with Marxist socialism. It's a arbitrary made-up Jesus, hippie socialist Jesus. That's nothing like the actual Jesus in the Gospels, but it doesn't really matter because most people don't read the Gospels. They don't actually know what Jesus taught. Most people think Jesus was hippie Jesus, right? Night and day with what's actually what Jesus taught, right? In the scriptures, in the church fathers, etc. But the world Jesus, the new Jesus, the affirming LGBTQ plus Jesus, and I'm not being blasphemous, that's literally what we just saw with the Vatican and the James Martin event. That Jesus is the world socialist leader Jesus. And it's exactly what Dostoevsky predicted. I mean, it is so spot on with the Grand Inquisitor chapter where the Inquisitor is telling Jesus, we don't need you anymore. We will give the people bread. We will give them socialism, universal basic income, all that kind of stuff. And thank you for your message, but we've actually tweaked it and made it better because we all know that really deep down, Jesus just came to kind of create a hippie, socialist, better world, right? And that is literally what especially the Brazilian Catholic action groups, Heldar Camara, all these different liberation theology people were pushing. And what do you know? Do you remember a document that we just read the other day? Gaudium et Spes? Oh, guess who helped write Gaudium et Spes? The heretical liberation theologian Heldar Camara. Now, did anybody disagree with my socialist reading and interpretation? I told you this is a socialist document. 100%. Did anyone disagree? Did you have any idiot tradcast trying to say, no, you can read it in a traditional way? No. Because, number one, they don't know what Gaudium et Spes says. And they don't know that Heldar Camara, by the way, I think he was actually, he was so bad that he was rejected by the Vatican, I think, at some point. I'm going from memory here. He was so bad, but he co-wrote The Church in the Modern World. Like, he wrote the socialist document of Vatican II, you idiots. Well, like, what is this disgusting spaghetti that looks like worms? What the heck kind of ad is this? That looks absolutely disgusting. And by the way, isn't Skyline Chili, is that Cincinnati chili? The place is terrible, dude. You want to know how dumb Yankees are, dude? When you go to Cincinnati, they think that it's normal to put sugar and cinnamon in the chili. And then look at the ad. It looks like literal like worms. They put cinnamon and sugar and shit in their chili up there. They're insane. Like, what is wrong with you people? Chili doesn't have cinnamon and sugar in it, dude. Or look at this disgusting food. What the hell is that? Could you imagine eating this? People eat this? Look at this. Chili spaghetti. And it's like worms. Is this an ad or is this like somebody making fun of what this? Look, I gotta see what this is. Oh, theory and reality. Okay, so somebody making fun of it. Yeah, exactly. Good. Get that off there. I can't even look at that. It's the nastiest thing I've ever seen. Tuxedo Mask, $2. Name 5 Dr. Seuss books. I don't understand the question. I don't read kids' books, dog. Although I take that back. I'm rereading Narnia books. And Jamie and I are thinking about doing a Narnia podcast because we never did that. So Heldar Camara co-wrote Gaudium et Spes that we just read. This horrible Vatican II Socialist, official Vatican Socialism, papal Marxist teaching. The following year, 1964, Camara would attend Vatican II. He would help write Gaudium et Spes. like what else do you need? Like, what is, I just can't understand what is wrong with people. Did they just not know what is in these documents? And then when you show them this, is it just like, la, 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 la. Like, how could you not see the problem in this? So he was a mega political activist, priest, vocal critic of the American coup, which overthrew Goulart. He was inspired by Fidel Castro and Che Guevara. Liberation theology would then begin to emerge thanks to Pedro Arrupe. Upon further research, there's scattered evidence that Camara advised Arrupe, leading to the possibility of a liberation theology being an indirect formulation by Camara. So the author of this article is theorizing that liberation theology actually literally comes from Heldar Camara. He was nicknamed the Red Bishop. In 1971, he addressed younger generations of America, calling for them to break away from the Western authority, such as issues that we saw with Vietnam. Camara then praised Mao's Cultural Revolution, which resulted in millions of deaths. This would mark the beginning of his relationship with Paulo Freire during the liberation theology movement. So here's Camara linking up with Pedagogy of the Oppressed, again, the author of, one of the co-authors of Gaudium et Spes, the Vatican II document that we just read the other day. He saw a massive rise in popularity, especially of liberation theology, and it focused this shift on the political climate of South America. Brazilian right-wing governments and anti-communist bodies were condemned by the Catholic Church there as oppressed. So he as a representative of the Catholic Church, maybe not necessarily explicitly the Vatican, but at least the Catholic Church in South America. It's time to abolish unjust society and build a new society. So French Revolution, Great Reset. We need to abolish and rebuild a new society. Just this is how insane and stupid these communists. They think you just like wipe everything away and you just start over. That's the Great Reset, right? Even calls to violence were justified, according to Camara, as long as you were fighting for the poor. So, yeah, it's fine to be violent because you're fighting for the poor, right? And this is where all the criminals and degenerates in society latch onto this, because they can do whatever they want. But because I'm doing it for the poor, I'm fighting the man. And if you know the history of the French Revolution, when they emptied out the Bastille and the prisons, all of the criminals and degenerates on the street, that's the real revolutionaries. They were just fighting for the revolution, but they're actually just criminals. So criminals use the banner of, oh, I'm fighting for the revolution, to go steal, loot, etc., grape, etc. Thus, according to Camara, anyone who opposed these revolutions was inhumane and thus justified. Now, let's see. This is talking about Heldar Camara in the 1958 Papal Conclave, which became mired in controversy following the revelation that Pope John the 23rd, the Pinko Pope that wrote Pacem in Terris, the Socialist encyclical, had been elected. The belief amongst some of the public was that this was an election that had been rigged against Cardinal Siri, who was, and we know that the CIA had made contacts with Siri, a staunch anti-communist. This is what leads some of the idiot trads to believe in the Siri thesis, that Cardinal Siri was actually elected. It doesn't really matter because the whole papacy is a bunch of criminals and organized crime figures anyway, but there's a kernel of truth to the Siri thesis. It doesn't prove sedevacantism, though. while Paulo Freire's relationship with Camara is interesting, the real interesting relationship in this regard is Pope Francis, who over the years has shown his admiration for Hildar Camara as a helper of the poor and the oppressed. However, what is more interesting is that Hildar Camara was not just an influence, he was the mentor of Pope Francis in his early years. This is the author of Gaudium et Spes and the BFF of Paulo Freire and possibly the actual creator of liberation theology. Pope Francis stated in 2020 that Christianity has never recognized the right to private property. What? Have you heard of the Ten Commandments? You shall not steal. I'm pretty sure that's one of those commandments you should be aware of, I would think. The right to private property is always accompanied by the primary prior principle of subordination to universal destination of the goods of all. What? You see that these people are Fabian socialists. They don't have the ability to offer Christian noetic healing because they're actually just stooges and tools of the global money power. Can you not see that? Now, let's look at Klaus. Klaus Schwab stated that Camara was his, quote, spiritual father. The Camara was my spiritual father. He described his first encounter with Hildar Camara in the 1970s. This was a crucial moment in the life of me. In fact, following this, Schwab was compelled to invite Hildar Camara to speak at the World Economic Forum Davos in 1974, bro. Look at this. There's Klaus right there in 1970. Look at the 74 Klaus. Where'd it go? The 1974. The Klaus. We will have Hildar Camara, the Archbishop of the Roman Catholic Church in Brazil, to come and to speak. And then we will have a discussion of the Club of Rome's limits to the growth. You see that? This is the actual World Economic. Look at Klaus, by the way, in the 1970s. Now that's a sexy man right there. That's a man who's eating Skyline chili spaghetti with the ladies and rizzing them up. That's a man with Riz right there. Tell me it's not a man with Riz. Okay. Klaus's Davos speech in 1974 included the idea of critiquing and getting rid of a waste society. Right? Classic socialist stuff. This event then compelled Klaus to invite many Catholic priests to come speak, as he had Camara in 1974. This was a key factor in the friendship that we now see between Pope Francis and Klaus Schwab. This article was written back under Francis. In fact, Klaus Schwab would pronounce Francis and Schwab would call Hildar Camara the servant of God in 2015. But now, wait a minute. Why is Klaus, as the head of the CIA's created under the Harvard Project with Kissinger? So this is Kissinger, Harvard, CIA, creating World Economic Forum Davos events, recruiting Klaus. Why are they pushing Fabian socialism? Again, there is no capitalist socialist fight. It's a fake dialectic. And as you can see here, all of these capitalists and socialists are at the same platform pushing the same technocratic Fabian socialist technocracy. How does this not prove our point? The common influence on Klaus to Pope Francis to all of them is this key figure, Hildar Camara and Paulo Freire, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Now, again, to remind you to go back to the MK Ultra sub-projects, because this actually does relate to all the same stuff. The same power structure pushing all of this, right? Remember, it was the CIA through the Harvard Project with Kissinger that created the World Economic Forum as another one of the entities like Bilderberg, as a steering committee, as a debating society as a mouthpiece of Bilderberg, etc. The CIA is not actually against Fabian socialism. The CIA did not like the NKVD and Stalinism, but the CIA did not have a problem with various brands of socialism, postmodernism, etc. Hence why they promote so many of these figures. CIA is actually a Fabian socialist institution. The OSS and CIA heads, many of the early heads of the OSS and the CIA were open Fabian socialists. Just like British intelligence, the original heads and the early establishment of MI5, MI6, SIS, Fabian socialists. So they're not anti-Marxist or anti-socialist, they're anti-Soviet. They didn't like Stalin's brand of Sovietism, and they really did have battles with the NKVD. But that doesn't mean the NKVD is good. They're both bad guys. Let's look at some of the MK Ultra projects and their sub-project headings. Now remember, people think of this as MK Ultra was a project. No. Dozens of projects at dozens of universities throughout the world. And this is just one of the very likely lists based on FOIA of the boxes that we do have. And I think it even lists them as so here's box number 1. These are the artichoke documents. So let's take a look at this. We see that here's a Smithsonian Air Force project. Here is studying plants, studying drugs. I don't know what Mulholland's manual is. It'd be interesting to know what that is. Hypnosis at Denver University. Testing plants by HEF. Office of Naval Research. Boston Psychopathy Hospital. Studying depressants and schizophrenics and alcoholics. Personality assessment. Remember me telling you that Abraham Maslow and his personality assessment was part of MK Ultra? Yep. Studying botanicals. CIA support and links to Fort Detrick. Fort Detrick comes up later as one of the key places where a lot of the other studies were done. LSD studies at blanked out university. Magic manual. Yes. Sorcery, magic. Exactly what I told you. And we're going to see that come up again, by the way. Study of the derivative of yohimbe hydrochloride. I don't know what that is. Defector study, or originally the drug study. That could be like Soviet defectors, that kind of stuff, studying their motivations for defecting. You've heard Dr. David Patrick Harry. Amanita muscara, right there. Subproject 22 is studying Amanita muscara. There's 2 or 3 that are studying finances. I don't know what that is a reference to, what that means, financing. Another Office of Naval Research on LSD. So there's at least 2 now on LSD. The manufacture of drugs by Pello Weiss Chemicals Company. Big Pharma. Note here, 3 of the sub-projects under 30 are at Fort Detrick. We don't know what those are. But you've heard me say, by the way, this vindicates Walter Bullard's book and John Marx's book, that this moves on to MK Search and MK Delta at Fort Detrick and other places. Study of botanicals and plants. More support to study of magic. I'm assuming that's what that means. More support to magic. It's worded weird. Cuba Conference. Sub-project involving getting a man on a diverted freighter. Some of these are really weird, by the way. Another one about LSD, Sub-project 40. Now, that was just box number 1. Box number 2. So I want to make sure you guys can see these because it's kind of hard to... It's weird font. Maybe I can make this bigger. Safe houses. I'm assuming that means CIA safe houses. MK Ultra interview notes with White, George Hunter, dope trafficker nemesis. I don't know what that means. More LSD studies. Studies of knocking people out, stress, and cancer. Study of the testing of aromatic amines. Aromatherapy? Is that what that is? I don't know what Pfeiffer is. Cornell. Artichoke team proposals so Operation Artichoke at Cornell University there. Hypnosis at blanked out university. Collecting botanicals, subproject 50, 51. Pharmacological studies, concussion studies. Do you remember me telling you too that as more of this information came out, especially about MKUltra in Australia, there were tons of studies, for example, on sleep and coma studies that were part of MKUltra. One of those was a serial killer, the most famous serial killer in Australia was part of MKUltra. Insomnia and sleep studies. Told you. Here's one. That's the human ecology front. That one comes up oftentimes in the books on MKUltra. Unwitting drug tests. So people who were unwittingly given drugs. Alcohol and drugs again. Here's a study on Hungarian refugees. Like, what? Like, I have no idea what that one is. Now, a lot of these sub-projects you can find. So you could just... So whatever Hungarian refugees is, that's sub-project 65. And kind of like sub-project 121 on witchcraft and sorcery, which you can look up right here. Probably a lot of these you can look up. I haven't looked up all these because there's just so many. Like, this is massive amounts of documents, right? What else do we have? CIA using institutes and facilities. So there's a study on the CIA use of institutions and universities. Knockout. Like, what the heck is that? Like UFC, knockout? I don't know what that is. University of Kentucky's narcotics farms and narco-hypnosis. Subproject 73. Massachusetts mental health. Subproject 75. Subproject 77 and 78 is just called Biolab. Sounds like some Resident Evil level stuff. Like, what the hell? Another Hungarian refugees. What is that? Hypnosis. Stanford Medical School. Stanford Medical School telecontrol. Like telephones? I don't know what telecontrol is. Study of allergies. Hyperallergic responses or substances. Interesting. Like have I not told you guys this for years? Like, it's all kinds of stuff, crazy stuff. You would never even think of this as part of MKUltra. Drug testing and screening of animals. Toxin studies, the Cuba chapter. This sounds like Clive Cussler novels or something. Like, it sounds like a book that, like a Bourne level, or who's the guy that writes all the boomer Bourne conspiracy stuff? Schizo psychotherapy. I told you in the Australia MKUltra studies, they were studying schizophrenia, of course. Mass conversion studies. Queen's College. So MKUltra was studying mass conversions. Now, I don't know to what religion or what they're talking about, but just in general. Children's summer camps. Uh-oh. That doesn't sound good. Adolescent gang studies. Biological warfare studies, Cuba chapter. Sabotage of petroleum studies. Russian study on electrodes. MK Naomi. Gas sprays and aerosols study. The mentally disturbed in their environment study. Microbiology. Cultural influences on children. Subproject 121. Witch doctors study. McGill University. MKUltra. Told you. Study of neurokinin. I don't know what that is. CO2s and acid-base researches. Placebos and drugs. Disaster and stress studies. Rapid hypnotic induction studies. Personality theory. Columbia University. Safe houses. ESP research, sub-project 136. Again, back to the occult. Handwriting analysis. Human voluntary drug testing. Bird disease. Bird disease? Psychometric drugs. Bacteria research. Marijuana. George White and Federal Bureau of Narcotics. MK Ultra Ape A and Ape B. I wonder what Ape A and B is. You with Harambe or you with Gorilla Zoe? Which ape you with? MK Ultra Artichoke. We don't know what these are. These are all blacked out. Artichoke. Box number 6. Vacaville facility testing. Ooh, 3 of these. Remember this? We've talked about Vacaville. Artichoke documents. Brainwashing. Boom. Look at that. Brainwashing. Cybernetics. Cold War. Drug research and operations. Drug subprojects. Communist control techniques. John Marx. So even John Marx is mentioned in the documents. That's interesting. Federal penitentiary studies. Hypnosis again. Do we get the idea? I mean, oh, here's one. Application of Tesla's technology in the modern world. That's wild. That is box number 8. Magic and Mulholland. I don't know what this is. What is this? Miscellaneous MK Ultra and Artichoke documents. Subprojects. MK Noom. Mushrooms. Naval research. Parapsychology. Here's Ghostbusters, right? Here's Peter Venkman right there. Pharmaceuticals. Witch doctor study. Again. Another one. Puerto Rican studies. Safe houses, again. Sensory deprivation studies, right here. Tradecraft. That's spies. Right? Espionage. Toxicity in mice. 4 studies. Sleep machine. What is a sleep machine? Electric fish studies. Like, I told you, it was all over the place, and it's crazy stuff. And that is the 7 full boxes, and then like smaller little boxes. There's even a box of index cards. This is the known FOIA MK Ultra documents to date. Me and Eugene, $5. Cinnamon spaghetti is a product of Fabian socialism. Texas became a member for a month. What's up, dude? Matt Scroggin, $10. Thank you for explaining the dialectic between communism and economics. I came to your channel as a lover of Austrian school, but thank you for things well explained. Well, I mean, I think they're still better than the socialists, but at the end of the day, they're all sort of, you know, atheistic theories of value is kind of the root problem. Kristen, $5. Thank you for this informative chill stream. Thank you, Kristen. I really appreciate that. Hades Undead, $5. If you start reading Narnia, I will use it as audio to fall asleep to. I've already read Narnia. Well, I take that back. I've read all the way to, I haven't read the last one. So Great Battle or whatever it is. Like, so I lacked having read the last one. But Jamie's only read Narnia and the Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe and Magician's Nephew. So we're listening to Horse and His Boy right now, which is, there's some really fascinating, interesting stuff I didn't catch the first time I read Horse and His Boy, and now I see what C.S. Lewis is doing and who he's critiquing there, which I didn't catch the first time I read it. So there'll be some tidbits and nuggets. But I'll give you this link right here if you're interested in this. Oh, Dick Daring, $10. Jay, I'm a long-time listener. This is my first super chat. What's up, man? Thank you. What is the difference between talking about globalist philosophy and praxis and national level politics? What's the difference? I mean, let me see what you go on to say. It seems like it's an upper layer of the same thing. What is the benefit of knowing this? Well, I mean, one of the things I did was try to tell you guys that when I learned a lot of this stuff, I wanted to put that information into action, and that's what led me to Bitcoin as the ultimate store of value way for me to counteract the Fabian socialist-based, usury-based fiat dollar. So, the other way to understand this information is to, and make it practical, is understand that it's spiritual. So, I mean, you could say, what's the point of all this? It's blackpilling, it's whatever. But it's not blackpilling. It's actually the only way out of this system. You have to take these pills, take this medicine to actually exit the system. Otherwise, you're just going to choose, like a cipher in the Matrix, to go back into the Matrix. And, obviously that's not good for your health if that's what you choose to do. So, I'm not really understanding your question though about national politics. I don't really care about national politics. I don't really see it's kind of like people who follow the Vatican and the drama and the Skittles soap opera of the Vatican every day or every week. It's like, okay, how is this benefiting your day-to-day life? Is that what Jesus did? Was like set up a church where all the world pays attention to the gay drama in the Vatican? Is that really what Jesus had in mind when he set up the church? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. It's just stupid. So divorced from the actual, mindset and purpose of the church. So the information isn't blackpilling, it's liberating. I don't understand, why you would think it's blackpilling. I think maybe at first, if you see this stuff, it's daunting. And maybe in that sense, you kind of feel like, well, what can I do? Well, there's a lot you can do. I mean, you can take control of your own personal life, your own situation, your own spirituality, your own health. The global elites don't control that. You control that. So I think they've tricked everybody into thinking that what happens in Washington is so important. You know what I mean? And everybody's following this soap opera of what Trump's doing today and what did he say today? And like, none of that really has any impact on your day-to-day life. Bitcoin and other snake oils. I hope you're quoting somebody else. I'm about to boot you from the chat because, like, if you don't get it, I don't even have the energy to argue with you guys. But if you're going to diss it, then just leave. Like, there's no point in you being here. Tuxedo Master Dollars, are you the Orthodox Pope or something? Yes, I'm the Orthodox Pope. Correct. I read about Operation Condor. I know that Pope Francis was involved in that. But that doesn't have anything to do with proving that socialism is good. Right. Have I seen what? I don't understand the chats. No, not you. TJ is the guy who's like shitting on Bitcoin. It's like, why are you even in this chat, dude? Like, this is the chat for you if you're at that level. TJ says they shaped our modern world. I agree with you. And then he's like, Bitcoin is snake oil, but maybe he put quotes around it, so he might be making fun of somebody. David James Flood became a member. What's up, guys? Welcome. Now, remember, the website is reworked. I still got some tweaking to do, but everything should be actually running a lot smoother and easier. So you can always become a member and sign up at the website. It's very easy. If you want to cancel, it's right here under cancel or change your membership. Purchase a membership here. Bookshop right here. Everything is super easy, super boomer friendly is what I was going for here. And all of the member content, unfortunately, is because this is just the easiest way to do it. It's also kind of annoying, but everything is on one page. So if you're a member of the website, everything is just right here on this tab, and it's one giant page of all the talks. Tuxedo Mask $2, Bitcoin or gold. You can only pick one. Obviously, Bitcoin. I sold all my gold in 2018 and put all of that into Bitcoin. And I was right. It was the right decision to make. I'm not telling you what to do because I'm not a registered financial advisor, but that's my choice. Gold is for dumb boomers. But anyway, so we see here we've got CIA studying witchcraft right here. It's kind of hard to read this blurry, declassified document font. It looks like they're trying to understand the mindset of witch doctors. But a lot of it's blacked out and you can't really understand what they're talking about. And then it's a bunch of statements of how much money is being spent. Trying to see what this is talking about. Connected with blank art, very highly of blank abilities. However, they feel that it could rob, or that economic rehabilitation, public health, the agency's position on. It's just hard to make out what this is actually about. Here it's talking about drugs. Drugs in primitive settings. This is the witchcraft document. Let me see if I can go back and let's see if I can decipher anything from the earlier part. This subproject 121 is approved to support research programs of blank. It will add to our understanding of Native American or Native Indigenous psychiatry. I don't know what that was blanked out, including the use of drugs which are unknown or not used by Western practitioners. It will assist in the identification of promising young something. Witches, witch doctors, occultists who might be of direct use to the agency. They will be located in, it doesn't say where, thus carrying out the plan of developing witchcraft as a worldwide organization. Wow. I mean, we don't know what that is, but it's probably witchcraft. Since blank will learn the blank language of subproject 95. Okay, what was subproject 95? Let's see what that one is. Osgood? I don't know what that is. That's a person, but I don't know what. The project will be funded through blank. So this is just talking about what they're going to study in the funding of creating a network of something. The proposed study of witchcraft is for theories of mental illness and treatment. The efficacy of supernatural disturbances, we don't know, it's blanked out. The investigation is about the possibility of integrating witchcraft practitioners and psychiatric disorders. This is crazy. Starts with number 1, usage of magical words in their defense against blank. Psychoneurosis occurring during something. Divination. Okay, here it says most of the treatment then devolves upon blank, which can be divided into 2 types. Number 1, it relies heavily on magical methods of diagnosis. There is a priest of the blank who uses an elaborate method of divination for diagnosing. These divination methods are described by blank. Treatment based on the theory and cause directed. Angry ancestors. Defense against malevolent used words and invocations. Herbal methods of treatment. Drugs. There is a considerable degree of specialization in traditional medicine. Some of the witch doctors restrict their practices to eye diseases, others to lymph nodes. Treatment of these methods is largely a family secret handed down from father to son. Efficacy of the treatment of traditional witchcraft means. There's been very little attempt to appraise the results. Many believe that Western medicine is good for physical illness, but not with psychiatric disturbances. This may be due to the fact that witch doctors have been using compounds and drugs for many years, whereas native practitioners could be selected and given rudimentary Western training, and then they could integrate the occult and witchcraft into the medicine. This is pretty fascinating stuff. But there is your CA and your esoteric witchcraft and culture studies for you right there. That's just subproject 121, by the way, amongst dozens and dozens and dozens. The audio is on. Hello, hello. Can you hear me? Hello, hello, hello. We shouldn't be having any of these streaming problems because all the can you guys not hear me? How about now? Okay. All right. Well, guys, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. It was a chill stream. Thank you guys for your super chats. And hopefully you learned some things today. You saw some good information. If you would hit like and share. Also, you can super chat at any time. Tuxedo Mask $2. Would you worship a cow idol made of Bitcoin? Yes. Apparently that's what some of you think. A cow idol made of Bitcoin. You guys should be thankful about what information you're getting over here. If you want to be goobers, you can have at it. I'm just kidding, Tuxedo Mask. We love our goofy goobers. If you want to get signed copies, you can get them here in the bookshop. They will be hopefully coming out in the next few weeks. I don't know how long the printer will take, but there you go. There's your update on Socialist collapse and all the crazy stuff happening. Otherwise, you can get your tickets for the upcoming November conference. And everybody have a good... Oh, Troy Thodox, $10. Are occult elite organizations organizing chaos that they create during the wickedness of humanity? Wait a minute, let me start over. Are the occult elite and the organized chaos that they create worse than the wickedness of humanity before the flood or Sodom and Gomorrah? Well, I guess that depends on whenever the last days are, because Scripture says that the last days will exceed those previous days in wickedness. But I don't know if we're in the last days, nor does anybody really know if we're in the last days per se. It could be, but we'll have to wait and see. Otherwise, everybody have a good night.